The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 147. Super excited to have Tom Morris with us. Tom is the strength coach for women's basketball at Indiana University. He's been a head guy at LaSalle. He's worked at Penn State. He's had a great career, and wanted to have Tom on the show. We all deal with adversity in our daily lives in lots of different ways, and Tom was involved in an accident a few years back that left him paralyzed and in a wheelchair. And, I wanted to have him on the show. As a strength coach, it's almost unfathomable to me to think about how I could do my job in that way and how I would react to that. And wanted to have him on the show because he is one of the most positive people you'll meet, a guy that has overcome all these challenges, is truly a motivation to us all and how we should handle our daily battles, our daily adversity. And there are so many positive things in this episode to take away and be able to apply to yourself, apply to your athletes. But, we get into, lots of things. I mean, the accident and kind of how that's challenged him as a strength coach, how he uses that in terms of motivation when dealing with his athletes, and some of the recommendations that he has when you're dealing with athletes that have maybe had a season-ending or career-ending injury. And so, like I said, there is a ton to take out of this episode, and super appreciative for Tom to come on the show and be so sharing with such an amazing story. And this is how he's continually providing inspiration to us all. Before we do, I want to make sure we recognize our sponsor for this episode, Ignition APG. Ignition is a sports performance company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And, I want to make sure that to highlight their speed certification. They have another certification coming up April 22nd. And if you have not done this, I think it is well worth your while. I think getting advanced training in certain areas of strength and conditioning. I mean, we have to be experts in speed and power and balance and coordination and kinesthetic awareness and skill acquisition and on and on and on. And, we didn't have necessarily those classes. I mean, not too many of us, if any, have taken a class in speed development. And so they've put together a fantastic resource, a fantastic certification. I did it a couple years back. I'll actually be speaking at this year's seminar and certification. So I hope to see you there. It is April 22nd through the 23rd. Go to ignitionapg.com and click on the products and speed certification to be able to find more about it. But can't recommend it enough. I think it's a fantastic deal, and it's a nice little nugget to have in your arsenal when dealing with coaches about speed development. So make sure to check that out. Lastly, Ask Coach Mac has been going well. Have a new podcast called Ask Coach Mac. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher and all the different podcast platforms, or you can go to my website at askcoachmac.com and go there to listen to episodes, as well as leave a question and a voicemail for me to answer. I did this because I get so many questions sent to me via email. And then rather than try to respond to every single one of those one at a time, I thought this would be a great way to kind of get it out to the masses, ask or answer questions that were common, that I feel like everybody's kind of asking, and be able to have a place where that all lies for everyone. So again, resource for you. free resource. Go to iTunes and search for Ask Coach Mac. If you're there and you've listened to it, I'd love a review. I'd love any kind of feedback. Again, it's always something where I'm trying to give back to the community, and this is a way that I felt like I might be able to do so. So make sure to check that out. Sit back and enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, super excited to have Tom Morris with us down at Indiana. I've got a chance to hear Tom's story and wanted to have him on the show. He's got a unique story that I think we're all going to benefit from. And so, man, I really, truly appreciate you coming on, brother.
I appreciate being here, man. This is great. This is really great, and I really appreciate the time.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, Tom, let's take it back to kind of, I mean, you're at Indiana now, but, what got you into the profession in the first place, and then what's kind of led you to where you're currently at?
Yeah, it's a story of the avid athlete. Growing up, played football my whole entire life. I'm from Northeast PA. Dream of playing football at Penn State. Had a pretty good, successful high school career, but grade-wise, I really didn't take as serious as I should have, and moved on to a junior college with still the hope of moving on to Penn State. The reality was, got to that junior college, got my grades up, and then got accepted into Penn State. But at that point, it was a little too overwhelming to actually play at Penn State there. From that point, though, love just being in the weight room, being around athletics. It drove me into how I could get back into this without actually stepping on that field and playing again. And what ended up happening is I got up there very first day, and I volunteered. Worked with the Olympic side of things. Throughout that 3 to 4 year span of being at Penn State, I volunteered with Olympic sports. I volunteered with our basketball programs, and that led me to a graduate assistantship with our football program. And then from there, I received my master's from Penn State, and then moved on to LaSalle University as a director down there. Short stint I spent down in LaSalle, and I had the opportunity to get out to Indiana about 11 years ago, and it's been great ever since.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I think, and obviously you've been in the field for a while. I would imagine in that time you've made some mistakes. We all have. What's maybe the biggest mistake that you've made and kind of how you learned from it?
Yeah, I think the big thing growing up, like I said, academic-wise, I really kind of blew it off. I love the idea of sport. I love the idea of coming in. I love the idea of coaching. But I neglected some of the X's and O's as far as the physiology that went into it. And at an early stage, I kind of blew it off. I kind of was able to be smart enough to make it through the classes, but not really get in depth to really understand exactly how the body moves and why it's doing everything. So in the recent, over the last 12, 13 years, I really had to backtrack a lot and really put my nose in the books and really understand and study from there. The other part of that is it's coaching, and I love the part of coaching, but it's also networking, and sometimes you get locked into a certain network and you don't kind of get out of that area. And I've heard it on the podcast before and a lot of different things. Networking is the key to life, and getting out and understanding and knowing and getting an actual idea of what other coaches do and other people do. Not only is going to help you out in this field, but it's going to help you out in life. And I try to teach that to our athletes. I try to teach that to all of our interns and GAs. Understand, go out there, meet people, and just open up that network as wide as you can.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's a major piece. I think sometimes people pick the one or the other, right? They'll put their nose in the book and they won't do anything in terms of the networking piece, or they're just a networker or self promoter and they're not sharpening that sword. And so I think that's again, wrote about that in the book about being a technician and being a manager and being an entrepreneur. I think those are the critical factors of having success in this field, and you've done that. It hasn't gone without its challenges, though, has it?
No, it hasn't. It's gotten quite interesting for me.
Well, Tyler, I don't want to take anything away from the story because you got a unique story. Obviously, you're an avid athlete, outdoorsman, mountain biker, the whole deal, and there was an accident that happened. Kind of go into that story a little bit and kind of how that's affected your career.
Yeah, so I'm on my third year now at Indiana, post-accident, we'll call it. It's like the life I have right now. But again, as you said, I was outside as much as I can. As a strength coach, you got to put in some time. But every minute away from this place, I put in on a bike, running, swimming, whatever it was. I competed at the highest levels of triathlons, to whatever it was. But the more exciting and the more I could push my body, the better I felt like I was living out there. So one day I'm out training on my mountain bike, and literally training ride. We're coming around a corner, pretty low key, but coming around this corner, I hit something. To this day, I don't know what that was, but it flipped over the handlebars. And when I flipped over the handlebars, I ended up hitting on my head first in that rotation. And everything is real vivid. It's real. I can remember everything. I never blacked out. I never did any of that. And it all literally was right in front of me. But when I hit my head, it jarred. The impact hit from this side, and it jarred my head back. What happened was I ended up falling on my back and laying on the ground. And the feeling I had over my body was literally like an old football injury where you go head-to-head, body tingles, body can't move, but you lay there and you know things are going to start coming back. And I just told myself, chill out here and everything will start coming back to you. At that point, I couldn't feel anything from below my chest. My hands were real weird, but I had a lot of confidence that it was coming back. I lifted up my arm to look at my watch at that point, and literally as a minute went by and nothing was coming back, I thought to myself, this could be a little bit more. 2 minutes passed, 3 minutes passed. And I said at that point, Tom, you're in a little bit more deeper shit than you thought. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So I laid there, and at that point I had my cell phone in my back pocket, earbuds in from the ride. So I thought, you know what, you got to call somebody, find out what's going on. I reached behind into my back pocket to literally pull out that cell phone. When I reached back to try and pull out the cell phone, it was the first time that I realized that my hands weren't working. They literally were there, but I couldn't squeeze, I couldn't pull, I couldn't do any of the stuff that I was able to do just minutes before that. And I laid there trying to work to pull that cell phone out. I tried. That went on for a good 15 to 20 minutes of just trying to figure out stuff. And I'm talking everything in my mind from Bear Grylls. What is he going to do? You know, you're not going to lay here on your ass, and you're going to go after this, and you're going to figure out how to get out of this. As time went on, I fought for a good 40, 45 minutes at that point and realized, it's not going to come out. Like, no matter what I tried, no matter how I moved, it was stuck in there. And I laid there in this park looking up at the sky, 70-degree day, perfect, ideal day to be outside, no humidity, just this beautiful spring day in May. And I said to myself, you know what, it's not going to be that bad. I mean, somebody's going to come by. This is a pretty popular park. Stuff will be, somebody's going to come by, pull me up, and we'll be good to go. So that was the first hour, and then another hour passed.
Wow.
And then another hour passed. And about 3 hours and 45 minutes into this, finally a rider came by. And even backtracking a little bit at that point, that first hour wasn't quite that bad. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was peaceful, but there was a strange peace. There was definitely something that was keeping me at bay, and it's probably not something on this earth, but it was a lot more of just laying and understanding that somebody will come by. So with that, as the hours passed, what it was more neurological burning, basically, that was happening because of the nerve damage that happened in my neck, in the spinal cord, and my arms start catching on fire. And the pain that ended up following that was just excruciating. And I laid there and tried to figure out how to make this get better. But long story short is some riders came by at about 3 hours and 45 minutes. 3 hours and 45 minutes happened. And when the riders came by, luckily they were able to get help almost immediately. And at that point, they end up coming in, throwing me in the ambulance, and airlifting me up to the Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis.
Wow. And so, I mean, obviously, what's the extent of your injuries now?
Yeah, so that was the interesting part when I came in. I didn't know what was going on as far as that, so I'm even going to go back to that story a little bit. But the physician came out after an X-ray and CAT scan and told me that I broke my neck at that point. So what does that mean? To me, I didn't understand the exact extent of what that meant besides what my body was kind of going through. What it ended up being was a C6 injury, and a C6 cervical injury. Literally, with that, your impairment is huge from the chest down, along with hands, along with triceps. Functioning-wise, you got biceps that'll work pretty good, and then you also got some shoulder stuff that'll work. So the easiest way to say it is I was able to lift my arm, but when my arm would get up here, my hand would drop, and I couldn't quite keep it up there, and I was extremely weak all the way around. So I ended up having a C6, C7 fusion with a titanium plate that is in my neck. Kind of locked the hell up.
Now you're able to. It looks like you got some function back, obviously.
So rehab was awesome. So this whole thing, the story's really long as far as, went through a lot of stuff, but I'll sum it up pretty quick. Went through a year of rehab down in Louisville. Great friends that work as Louisville strength and conditioning coaches, so that was great to still be around stuff. But I also did everything down at Fraser Rehab. So I spent a year down there, literally 6 days a week, working from 7 in the morning till 5 at night. And, and it was really great because I think outsiders away from this field look at that and they're like, rehab, how'd you put that many hours and do all this stuff? That's what we do as strength coaches, and that's what's exciting. It was almost like I wasn't missing a beat as far as what the day-to-day life was.
Sure.
Getting out, working in the morning, getting up early, getting in, getting all your stuff in, but literally nonstop with that. So the rehab down there literally put me on a treadmill where they manually walked my legs and they did different things, which helped me gain a lot of function back on there. From there, the rehab in my hands to get all that stuff back, and the overall strength continued to get better. But that was about a year in Louisville. Wasn't until I got back to Indiana here and got back to the iron and actually got in here with with other strength coaches that they start putting me through our regular workouts and start teaching some stuff. And where I couldn't bench the bar, weights continued to keep going up and keep getting better and better. And it really, the idea of actually coming in and lifting and working hard and getting all that stuff in not only helped all the physiology that was going on, but it helped everything from the mental side of it as well. Continue to keep improving. The biggest thing I have going right now is literally core-wise. I have a lot more functioning core than before, and I do have a much more, the hands and everything else, the overall strength allows me to really function as a much lower injury. And the way the anatomy of that goes, basically it's, the higher up the injury, the more limitations you're going to have. And
sure.
Right now, I'm saying I'm functioning at about a T8, T9 area, which is a really, really great thing for me because it allows me to come in and really be able to do this job in day-to-day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned that with the job. I mean, obviously, you have to change quite a bit the way that you coach. I mean, not being able to demonstrate like you did, and you're not able to get around maybe as quickly as you had, and all those types of things. What have been some of the biggest challenges? What's
really funny. I hate, sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all.
So the biggest thing is back in school, back at Penn State, a little quick story. I remember doing this as an undergrad and being in that weight room and loving every bit of it. But I had a class, this rehab a recreational class, but basically you had to spend a day in a wheelchair. And I know a lot of universities do it, but I was working a lot in the weight room at that time, and I remember renting the wheelchair and going through this whole deal. And then I got to work, and I remember going in with the coaches, and I'm like, I got to do this for class. I just got to see how it would be. And I remember literally writing that paper on, this is my dream, want to be a strength coach, but there's no way of doing this job in a wheelchair. And I remember going through that, and my wife brought out the paper, and when this all happened, and she's like, remember when you wrote this? And so it had me in my, like when I was in rehab, still realizing, I gotta live almost this nightmare in reality right now. So How am I gonna come back and do this? So I came back here the first day, and I ended up coming back in May. And May was right at the end of the season, and we just had a few women's basketball players around here. And that was my first day. I had 8 women's basketball players in here, and literally came in here almost, if you want to say, tiptoeing to see how this is going to happen. 100% confidence on the outside, scared to death on the inside of how I was going to do this. Had an idea in my mind. That idea completely had to be revamped because I thought I could just talk my way all the way through all this stuff. No. What I end up doing is making a bunch of videos. We have TVs and stuff. I do a lot of stuff on demos. And we'll have the interns go through, and we'll have the interns actually show what I'm talking about, how I want it done, and go from there. But the biggest deal is that I'm fortunate that I've been around here for a long time, and all of our guys that went from a freshman to a senior, what they have known before was I always demoed it. They knew exactly what I was talking about. Right. So what I ended up doing is coming in here and being able to take those juniors and seniors at the time and letting them just demo what we had going on, and everything just ended up going. Set the mood, set the situation in this room, and allow these guys to just get after it, and they do. They're incredible as far as how they responded to this whole deal.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. I think obviously, I think in this world, no matter what, I think you probably agree with me, probably more so than my own understanding. But it's not what happens to you; it's so much about what you do with what you have, and that could be being in a wheelchair, that could be physical, that could be anything that you want to throw and fill in the blank, but you obviously are making the most of that. What have been some of the things that revelations that you've had? That maybe, I know as a strength coach, sometimes you take things for granted, or you take relationships for granted, or going through the training room or something along those lines. What have been some revelations that this experience has shown you that, man, I wish I would have known that 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think taking advantage of every single day, I think, is a big deal. And that's kind of cliche because of where it is now. But again, I was outside all the time, taking advantage of that. What I did was sometimes if I had a bad day, that bad day sometimes affected me. And I carried it over. I carried it over to my wife, or I may have carried it over to staff members or whatever it is. But I hung on to it. And I hung on to the fact that sometimes this bad day was the end of the world type things. And what I've realized now is, man, life is short, and by all means, I'm still living and doing all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But you got to take everything in perspective. And for me, what I've done is really want to take everything in perspective. I always said, you sitting at a stoplight, and the stoplight is, you're in a rush and you're getting pissed off because they won't change or whatever. Well, me maybe being in a wheelchair, we all have our frustrations. All that stuff is all relative. But how you actually perceive that, and how you adapt to that, and how you really make the best of whatever situation is all about what living is, and not taking stuff too serious, but not going out there and just the end of the world. The end of the world isn't happening because of the little things right now. And that's been the big thing for me, is the little things don't affect me as much right now. I try to live this as great as I can to the highest level, but I don't let the little things bother me as much and get hung up on all that stuff. And that is really the biggest part. The little things, as far as maybe a little curb or little things like that are going on day to day, is stuff that I took completely for granted. For snow. It snows outside. I took that for granted before. I loved it, but trying to get around that in a wheelchair is but the big thing, as far as what I really try and put off, is that literally the day-to-day stuff. Take advantage of what you have right now, and really just be down a little bit, but don't let it ruin your whole entire day.
No question. I often talk about working with injured athletes. It's one of the most challenging times of an athlete's career is when they're maybe down from an ACL or something along those lines. And what happens typically is, they kind of self-sabotage themselves, self-ostracize themselves. Just naturally you're taken out of the mainstream of lifting and practice and things along those lines. But then they almost compound that with trying to stay away because they feel like, I'm not giving everything that everybody else is. I'm sure, I've never had a serious injury like that, but I'm sure that gives you some perspective as to how to handle those types of athletes. What would be your advice? Because one of the things that I think was fantastic about you, just talking to you off camera, is like, man, I'm an open book, man. Talk to me. You're not going to offend me. You're not going to hurt me. You're not going to, I think sometimes I had this conversation with Jeff Nichols when I had him on the episode. Here's a former Navy SEAL that's gone through all kinds of injuries, and it's like sometimes the best thing is just to be direct, and to go right to the point. Talk about how we should handle those injured athletes. How do you tiptoe kind of around the emotional part, but then also transition into that motivation?
Right, that's a great question, and I have to agree with that. It has to be 100% direct. I was almost going to say that right before you did, but the idea is this: 18 to 20-some-year-olds are still trying to find their way with stuff, and they still they crave that attention. I remember hearing Coach Kim Manny say how they demand discipline, they demand that. What we're trying to do at 18 to 20-some years old with this injury is make these guys a part of what we're trying to do, and it's almost, you got to be direct, and you almost got to put them back into these situations and not let them shy away, because what they think might help and what they think might be part of making them better, I almost think is almost all the time opposite of that. And for me, with our injured athletes, even actually me personally, what I try to do is make sure that even, I'll give an example with our guys when they're lifting, and I'm talking about our guys as far as strength coaches. That was one of my biggest things that I loved in the past, lifting with the guys, lifting with the strength coaches, doing all this stuff. Well, now I'm the guy in the wheelchair. I can't get into most of the machines. I'm definitely not doing a leg day, and how am I going to be part of all this stuff? And the natural tendency even for myself is, I'm just going to chill out. I'll do my own workout. I'll do my own thing, whatever. the biggest thing that always gives me the reward on the back end is just getting myself in there and understanding that people and teammates do want to help. They want you to be part of this stuff. And your idea of you being kind of away because you can't participate to their level sometimes takes away from everybody. It takes away from not only your teammates, but it's really going to take away from you. And I found that for myself, the more I get involved there, the more that I think my colleagues here, it benefits, the more everybody benefits. And with our athletes, it's the same way. ACL stuff, everything. I try and keep these guys as inclusive as we possibly can. Just because you're coming back from that ACL, you're not hanging out in the athletic training room. You're not doing all that stuff. I need you in the weight room around your peers, allowing them, still giving them stuff, but allow them to take it. It's a tough part of life, too, is allowing, when you have an injury, for others to help you. And
Sure.
And what I have found, that's been the most humbling thing for me, is I was always the guy that would, I wanted to help. I wanted to do that stuff. I wanted to be the strong person of the group. And when you're not the strongest of the group, it's a whole different mindset as far as where you have to take it, what you have to do. And sometimes you just got to be humbled with that and allow teammates to help you because you're helping them in the same term. But most of all, you guys are both gaining and getting better. And I've learned that firsthand with what I've gone through here because, like I said in the beginning, I've gained the most from being back at this place. I mean, rehab was great, rehab was ever, but being in this gym, being around my colleagues here, and being around these strength coaches has enhanced my mind, but it's enhanced my body to a highest level. And it wasn't quite that easy to want to transition back, especially with these guys. And
Sure.
luckily they opened it up and got in there, and things have been great.
Oh, that's great. What about, what have you taken from obviously your background and then, going through the rehab process in your own program design? Kind of how's your own program design? I mean, I think that's one of the things as strength coaches, at least for me, is when I've been forced to get outside of football, strength and conditioning, I've really struggled, I mean, obviously you're going from a situation where you're healthy, training a certain way to having to alter the way that you train now. What have you learned, and then how's your typical program design set up?
Yeah, so it's an absolutely great question because my program design is completely different right now, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's a lot slower. Before it was literally I took for granted that everybody could come in and do a push-up, and everybody could control how the body's when we're bench pressing, where elbows are going to be, where to set the back, where to set everything. And I just took it for granted because that was an easy thing that I'd worked many years on doing. But especially with female athletes and everything, I took a lot of stuff for granted on really guys that were very novice lifters. And it doesn't matter what kind of background they have. When they get here at 18 to 20-some years old, they're coming in as a pretty novice lifter with maybe very small exceptions. So the little things as far as the technique stuff, as far as where a squat's going to be, how to set the hips, how to engage the core. All of my stuff has been backtracked so much that literally I spend weeks and weeks on literally learning how to set the hips the right way. They're literally working on a lot more technique, but slowing these progressions down, where before it was literally 100 miles an hour. We've got 8 weeks. I need to see gains.
Right.
It doesn't matter where we're going to go from there. I need to make sure that we're continuing to go. And I don't think I got the best out of the athletes at that point. So at this point here, I've changed it up a lot where we're literally going and we're learning a lot of the small things. We're learning how the body moves, learning how the body works, and then overall work capacity. Totally took it for granted, especially coming from, doing half Ironmans and doing different things. Work capacity, I just, to go out and run these miles or run these sprints and run for an hour, I just assumed everybody could kind of run 40 minutes and so on. So I backed off all this stuff substantially to make sure that we start from a very, very, very novice area, and then we grow to whatever it may be. But it's not about the first year. It's always between that 1, 4, and 5 years that we're looking at the best and the highest level of potential with that. But that's changed for me a lot because I've had to relive that whole circuit.
Sure.
I've read books on it and all that stuff, and until you actually have to be put back in that situation, it's changed stuff a lot.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was what have been some of the best resources that you've found to kind of to take you back and to relearn that process?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the stuff I do is I lean on a lot of our colleagues in within our field. But I mean, we have 14 strength coaches in this weight room right now, and we have guys from Baylor, we have guys from all over the place that literally have this background that literally I could pick their brain day to day. we meet up and we go over stuff all the time. From that point, a lot of books, but a lot of different things that I look at as far as some of the programming. I look at my own programming, and I just look at what the progressions were on there and where I don't want to be. So a lot of time it's a lot of self-reflection for me because everything I do, it's charted, it's mapped out, it's lined out, and at the end of it, I look at and reevaluate. Hey, do you like it or dislike it? Now it's been able to, going through this whole deal, actually figure out why I don't like it, what I needed to do to change. So a lot of it is that backtracking, really backtracking to 05, whatever it may be,
Right.
to literally understand, hey, this is why I didn't like this part of it, way too much, way too little, and then kind of go from there. But honestly, the biggest thing I could have is literally, stuff like what we're doing right now, but talking to coaches, man. I think word of mouth is just it, because I think words and books and everything, they carry a lot of meaning, and there's no doubt, but there's still an interpretation off of each of them. And the same with the overall communication. But when I can actually talk to you face to face, or just be down there and see this in demonstration, I think that's the biggest, one of the best things that you could get as far as your overall knowledge and continuing to make gains in this field.
Absolutely, that's exactly why I do the show. I get to learn from people from all over the world on a weekly basis. So it's a fun, man. But well, hey, buddy, I know you're busy. We usually end the show with some resources here. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
Best piece of coaching advice I've ever received is know your athletes. Know your athletes, but understand your athletes, and actually get to really, 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 really. I can't emphasize enough. Really understand your athletes, what makes them click, what's their backgrounds. Mike Gittleson brought it up one day. He finds out. He used to, back in the day, call up family members and find out where the guys are from. Understand what makes each person click. That's the idea. The X's and O's are great, and all that stuff is very valid, and you need that. But what makes an athlete click, what makes a person click, is something that I think not only a coach needs to know, but a CEO needs to know. Anybody in life, this is what makes people thrive, is understanding people and how to get the best out of your people. And for me, that's been the biggest coaching advice that I've gotten. It's the biggest thing that I live day to day, because when you understand a person, what makes them click, what makes them do things that they never believed that they could do, and have the trust in you, that's how you get the best out of everybody, and that's how you have success.
Absolutely, man. What about, you mentioned a couple resources there, but give us a book, app, and website recommendation.
Book, app, and website. Great. That's a great call for me. I'm going to be honest. I look outside of not the overall strength coaching thing, but I think a great book right now that I'm in is Mindset. I think Mindset is an incredible deal as far as how a person learns, how a person grows. I think it's a great way to look at, me. I remember opening that book up and going, this is common sense stuff. This is where I'm at. And as the book goes on, you start finding traits different ways. But the growth mindset is that open mindset. There's something that I pride Indiana strength and conditioning on as far as this growth mindset. We're not narrowed into one side or the other, but we're always trying to educate and keep each other better. As far as apps, I'll be honest with you, technology-wise, I don't have a great app on there. I love the new one that we have in as far as the coach out of Old Dominion has. Some is the technique, or some of the different pictures. Love that part of it, because I love the part that they could actually pull up and actually see that. And then as far as websites all over the place. I find information all over. I mean, I'm talking T-Nation, you name it, you could get it. There's information all over the place, and how you interpret it and how you kind of put it all together is really what it's all about. But my biggest word of advice is literally calling up and making sure that you could try and stop in and see people, because it's relationships more than some of those other resources, and see what you could do with it. And these podcasts and actually getting to understand and know people, put a face to a lot of stuff, has been the biggest thing that I could ever recommend.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And you're a testament to that. Obviously, I mean, being able to get a phone call with you, a Skype call with you, and this is really how you learn. In my opinion, is getting a chance to talk shop and getting a chance to talk to you before and after, and the whole deal. And I echo that. One of the assignments that we make our interns do is a site visit every semester for that reason, because you'll learn more about a person walking into their weight room for 5 minutes sometimes than you would from doing research on the internet. But obviously, it's not you didn't go through all this to be an inspiration for people, but you are an inspiration to people, and I know you are to your athletes more importantly, and that's what we all strive to do as strength coaches is to be an inspiration and to help them be the best version of themselves, and you obviously are doing that on a daily basis, and truly appreciate you coming on, being so candid and open with your story, and reminding us to remember the little things and to focus on our athletes and start with that each day, and our days are going to be just fine. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
I appreciate you having me, man. It's been great.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.